Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up. So I read 7 books in March, which was pretty decent. The first book I read was Gloria O'Brien's History of the Future by A.S. King. I was a little bit disappointed by this book. I kind of had high expectations because the only other A.S. King book I've read is Everybody Sees the Ants, and that was one of my favorite books that I read last year. I had high hopes for this one, and it wasn't quite everything I thought it would be. I did enjoy it. It's an interesting story. It's about a girl whose mom committed suicide when she was 4. And she always kind of just assumed that one day she would end up committing suicide. She's never really saw a future for herself. She doesn't have any plans after she graduates high school. One night her and her friend drink something, and when they look at people, they can see that person's future. She starts writing it all down to try to make sense out of everything. I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read in March was Purpose for the Pain by Renee Yohe. This book was a reread for me. If any of you are familiar with the organization To Write Love in Her Arms, you may be familiar with this book or with Renee. Renee struggled with addiction and depression and self-harm throughout her life, and then when she was, I think, like 19 or 20, she decided to get help. This book is photocopied pages of her diaries. I really enjoy this book, if you can't tell. Some of it is a little bit hard to read just because of the subject matter, but it's a really great read. It's really inspirational. I really enjoy it. I give it 5 stars. The only thing is that it is literally like photocopied pages, so sometimes it's a little bit difficult to like actually read it. If you're interested in reading people's stories and stuff like this, I would definitely recommend this to you. The next book I read was my TBR jar pick, which was to read a book that takes place in a different country. I read Isla and the Happily Ever After by Stephanie Perkins, which I realize is kind of a lame pick for like read a book that's set in a different country, but I really wanted to read it. And it's mostly set in France, so it counts. This is the 3rd novel in the Stephanie Perkins companion series, and this is by far my favorite. Isla is my spirit animal. Like, I feel like we're the same person as far as like just a little bit personality-wise, like being kind of awkward and like clumsy, but also with relationships, like she gets me. I really enjoyed this book. This is my favorite out of the 3 of them. I gave it 5 stars. So I've been on a little bit of a mission to finish reading any series that I've started and not completed because it's getting out of hand, and I have a few other series that I want to start, but I don't want to start them when I already have so many series that I've started that I want to continue reading, but I haven't. So I've been on a bit of a mission to finish some of those. So the next book I read was Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, which is the 2nd book in the Percy Jackson series. I enjoyed this book not as much as the first one. I didn't find it quite as exciting and like intriguing as the first one was. I still enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read was Paper Towns by John Green. This is a reread for me. This will forever be one of my favorite books. I love this book so much, and if you don't love this book, I don't know if we can be friends. It's just this beautiful, beautiful book. It's my favorite John Green book, and I sincerely hope that they don't screw up the movie because I'll be really upset. If you're not familiar with the story, it is about a kid named Q who is a senior in high school. He has kind of been in love with this girl named Margaret Spiegelman his whole life. She's kind of like an enigma to him. He doesn't really know her very well. They were friends when they were kids, but then they grew up and kind of grew apart, but he's still in love with her. And he spent all this time kind of idolizing her and making up like an idea in his head of who he thinks that she is. And one day she shows up at his house in the dead of night and gets him to sneak out, and they go do all of these crazy things and have a really good time. And when he wakes up the next morning, Margot has disappeared. She's run away and she's left clues behind for him to follow. If anybody's seen the movie trailer and has not read the book, I would really encourage you to read it. I've heard a few people say that like Margot seems very like manic pixie dream girl in the movie trailer, which she is, but I would also like to point out that that is the point. Like, this whole book is about imagining people complexly and like deconstructing that whole idea. If you're writing off this book based on the movie trailer, don't do it, just read it, it's beautiful. The next book I read is The Titan's Curse by Rick Riordan. This is the 3rd book in the Percy Jackson series. I also really enjoyed this one. I liked it more than The Sea of Monsters for sure. I gave this one 4 stars. The last book I read in March was the 4th book in the Percy Jackson series, which is The Battle of the Labyrinth. This I think is my favorite book out of all of them so far. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. In addition to all the books I read, I also read volume 1 of the Walking Dead comics. I am being encouraged by my brother to read comics because that's something that I've never really done, and he really likes it. I figured I would start reading The Walking Dead because I watched the show and I'm obsessed with the show, so might as well read the comics. I'm enjoying it so far. I've got the second and the third one lined up. So you won't see these on Goodreads or anything because I'm not counting them towards like my total books that I've read for the year, just because I feel like they don't really count because they're not like books. But I figured I would include it in my wrap up because it's fun to talk about. That's all the books that I read in March. I'm gonna go ahead and pick out my TBR jar pick. Here we go. I got a smaller jar. Look, isn't it cute? It's way back. We have a book that takes place in your hometown. I'm gonna have to do some research. I'll see you guys later. Bye.